Hi folks, let's talk a little bit about Essay3. This is called a problem solution essay with research. And in some ways, this is the easiest of the essays that we do, and in some ways, it's the hardest of the essays that we do. The easy part about this particular essay, or the part that's easier than essay 2 in particular, is the topic choice and format or approach. Identifying a problem, discussing that problem, and offering solution is much easier, usually much more familiar to students than the analysis of text. So in that way, it's a little bit easier. The harder part is, first of all, length. This one has to be 5 to 7 pages, and incorporating research. And so that whole research element adds a certain level of difficulty as well that we'll talk about in just a second. So again, this one is 5 to 7 pages. I would say one of the more common problems for students is actually getting to that full 5 pages. So you want to make sure that you're working ahead of time and that you're getting the full length for the paper. Keep in mind, again, as I mentioned here, that a works cited page never counts as one of your pages. Okay, so don't write 4 and then add a works cited page thinking that's 5. That doesn't count. Okay. You need to effectively incorporate 4 to 6 appropriate, effectively documented sources. And let's maybe talk here quickly about topics. So I've listed some areas for you to think about. Again, the sum is simply identifying a problem and offering a solution or solutions to that particular problem. I would prefer to read things that revolve around recreation, hobbies, those kinds of things. I've listed a couple other things. Career fields is a good one as well. I mentioned education. These are certainly not the only things, but these are just some prompts maybe to think about. I'm looking for sort of unique topics that are interesting. What I want you to avoid are tired topics, things like abortion, gay marriage, legalization of marijuana, death penalty, etc. I've read 1,000 papers on those. Plus, those are complex topics that require a lot more than 5 pages, and they require argumentative techniques that you haven't learned in 111, right? That you will be learning about in 112. So you want to avoid those tired topics. You also want to be wary of like hot topics, things that are happening in the news that can cause a lot of emotional response. Those could be fine, but you want to, again, avoid something that's where your tone is full of anger or frustration or whatever. So if you've got a topic that you think might be problematic, just shoot me an email and we can talk a little bit about it. And the last thing here is incorporating research. And again, this is there's length. That's a common problem, lack of length. Of course, grammar editing is always a common problem with any of the essays, but incorporating research is a particular problem with essay 3 for students who don't do well in this essay. You need 4 to 6 sources. You need to cite each source at least once in the essay, although ideally it really should be cited more. You should be relying on those sources and not cherry picking, and that's talked about in the one of the research lectures. So there's not a rule to how much research should be in a particular paragraph, but I thought like a guideline might be the 80-20 rule. 80% your own words and 20% your source's words. And I would consider that 20% typically a ceiling. You don't want to go over that. Under that is fine, but going over is a little, maybe a little excessive, again, just depending on the situation. But use that as a general guideline. 80% of paragraphs should be your words, 20% or less, ideally, should come from your source. Some instructors require that you get a specific number of sources from the library or article databases or those kinds of things. I don't necessarily require that because of the wide range of topics that I allow. But I will say this, I do judge you and do evaluate those sources that you're using. And if you're not using effective sources, then you're not making an effective argument. So you really need to focus the beginning of your search at the very least, through those article databases and through the library. Depending on your topic, there may be really useful web sources, right? So, if you're confused about this, you think your topic really needs a lot of web sources, just shoot me an email and we can talk a little bit about it. But I want you to start with article databases, ebooks, and those kinds of things that are vetted through the library. And if you need to venture outside of that, again, you might consult with me. Again, it's okay to venture outside of that, but that's not where you want to start. So those are just a couple of tips for Essay3. Good luck as you work on it. And as always, let me know if you have any questions or concerns. Thanks.